So speaking of experts, and speaking of folks that can help us frame the question and ask provocative questions of ourselves, it's my pleasure to introduce our morning keynote. The world is really our resource. We have to know what we've got here, but we also have to reach out to the rest of the world and learn from them. And as I introduce him, I'm just going to ask Paul Brown to begin walking up here. His bio's at your place, but I just wanted to note that Paul is a noted author. Many of you, particularly on the academic side, have probably seen the book he co-edited, Cities of the Future. Paul Brown.
Well, thank you very much. I couldn't be happier than to be here this morning. And what a turnout and what a great facility. And I was very honored, really, by the opportunity to speak with you on this topic. One of the things that I do, in addition to my day job, is work with Steve Modemeyer and others with a group called IWA, the International Water Association, as the co-chair of a program called Cities of the Future, which grew out of that, which grew out of the book that was so kindly mentioned. I'll mention it again. So let me start here with some characteristics of what we're calling cities of the future, and see how many of these characteristics in fact are relevant to what's going on here. Because it seems to me when I look at the examples of what's occurring here, you can see many of these same things happening. That the cities that we're looking at out there to learn from as examples of where things are going right have very engaged communities like this one, and very engaged stakeholders, and within utilities, very engaged customers. I'm going to come back to this issue of engaging customers because I think the technology that we have and the direction that our industry is headed in is going to make working with our customers from a behavioral standpoint a much bigger part of what we're going to be doing in the future. They also have a vision, and I often use a slide which I'm not going to use today, which sort of concentric circles. Frequently, I'm talking to specific utilities, a wastewater authority, and they'll be wanting to do some innovative things and do some things differently. And as a utility, they have a vision. And then in Los Angeles, for example, where we were working for the Los Angeles Department of Public Works, Bureau of Sanitation on an integrated resources plan. Bureau of Sanitation is responsible for wastewater and stormwater. We'll reach out and actually bring in the Department of Water and Power and have the Department of Water and Power actually talk to the Department of Public Works. First time ever. And they began to develop a vision of how to integrate two utilities. Then you go to a place like Singapore. Singapore is kind of unique. It's a city-state on a very small piece of property, a mere, about 270 square miles. That's not a lot of space. It's also a city-state, so it's one of those few places in the world where there's only one level of government. It's one of the few cities that has its own Navy, Air Force, and Army. But they can make decisions sometimes more efficiently because they only have to talk among themselves. There, they have a vision. And what I would tell you is that when you get a community that has a vision, you've got something way more powerful than a couple of utilities that have a vision, and way more powerful than a utility that has a vision, because frequently utilities are limited in what they do by what their constituents expect of them. And when communities like this have high expectations and a real vision and mission, They can accomplish things that utilities by themselves don't even have the authority to do. And I think that's what's exciting here, and I'll come back to that. They go beyond conventional infrastructure, and I'm going to talk about what my colleague Vladimir Novotny and I call the fifth paradigm. We got to move beyond this because there's so many paradigm shifts going on that to keep track of them all is impossible. This is a fairly simple idea, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. But it goes beyond conventional infrastructure. It embraces it, however. But it looks at all these decentralized technologies we've got, and frankly, in the world of water technology, and you're all very familiar with it because a lot of it is going on here, we've got tools in the toolbox we never had before. And those people that are in the business of developing that technology in worlds like membranes and nanotechnology, they've stopped thinking about the distinction between what we used to call water, source water and wastewater. It's water. It's all water. We can do anything we want with it at any point in the system to make it fit for use. Water fit for use. Now, I would say, just on that concept, to take potable drinking water and use it to convey human waste to a wastewater treatment plant, that is water that is beyond fit for use. No need to use potable drinking water as the carriage for human, industrial, municipal waste. It's an artifact of the 19th century, brilliant artifact, although it was debated at the time. If you go back into the history of public works, it was debated as to whether you could take this precious drinking water and use it to convey waste, but it's a system that is good at what Vladimir would call fast conveyance of a material out of the urban landscape. So we need to think about these decentralized technologies and how we use them. They also have embedded in them, and you have this too, is functional landscape and buildings. So now they've got porous pavement. Bruce was talking about porous pavement. Well, what do we need porous pavement for? How does that relate to a wastewater treatment plant? I mean, I can't get this connection. So I'm going to try to talk about the connection and what's going on here in terms of how you develop this vision of the new purpose to which we're trying to use all these tools. And then finally, they have begin to exploit this most rapidly growing area of technological innovation, something you might have heard of as informatics or big data analytics. I mean, it's growing so fast that there's no real agreement as to what it should even be called. Advanced analytics, that works. No doubt you're doing it here somewhere in the university, and and it's definitely happening to you if you've got a credit card or an internet site. You're the victim of it, even if you didn't know it. So I talked about this, and Bruce was kind enough to talk about it, this first event that IWA and the Johnson Foundation, we worked with Northeastern University, and the National Science Foundation. This was back in 2006. We held this event in Milwaukee, which has also emerged. Milwaukee is a competitor of Tacoma for the kind of vision, but I will tell you that there's room for more than one center of excellence in what we're trying to do moving forward in the water industry. We held this event, and that's where the first time we kind of publicly talked about this fifth paradigm. So I'll just run through, you'll get this. This is the whole history of water in 5 bullet points. And it's so obvious that you don't even need this paradigm shift concept, but I want you to think about how different what we're trying to do today is from what we've done since prehistory. Now, it started with a kind of opportunistic go to where the water is. Most cities are by water because you need water. We all know this. You've got to have it for human life. So it's kind of opportunistic. Let's put a city where early cities located near potable water. Then, in Roman times, we began to develop engineered storage and conveyance for what was basically finding cleaner, better sources of water somewhere. And so in Rome, there's still aqueducts that are in use. Go back to Roman times. This concept of rapidly bringing water from somewhere far away, the way we do it in Southern California from the Colorado River and the Bay Delta, that's a 2,000-year-old idea, okay? It's not technological breakthrough. It's a 2,000-year-old idea. And drainage, which is the other innovation that the Romans were one of many contributors to, because it wasn't just Rome, but Rome is notable for still using some of these facilities. The Cloacus Maximus, still a drainage facility that flows into the Tiber River. It was a great innovation was combined with this drainage, keeping land dry. The innovation was, let's put waste in it as well. So we can quickly get rainwater out of the forum, and wow, we can pee in it also. And that was a breakthrough. That worked so well that by the 19th century we had all these really horribly contaminated and serious health problems created both by contaminated water entering this fast conveyance system and polluted water leaving it. And so in the 19th century, at both ends of the pipe here, we introduced treatment technology, which was another huge breakthrough. So I'm up to paradigm 3. We've continued to tighten up the requirements on that kind of that approach to treating at the point at which water enters the system or leaves the system. We're pretty good at that in the United States, actually. It doesn't solve non-point problems, however. Not everything gets into a water body via a pipe, and hence, especially that very dirty water that comes off streets if it hasn't rained for a while, that makes its way into a water body and is not treated, hence the need for some porous pavement, because if we could get that, we could prevent that first flush from entering the water body. We're improving water quality. And so the fourth paradigm was to kind of add technologies to try to address non-point sources. But it's still all built on fast conveyance systems, fast conveyance pipe systems with treatment technology added to it. I've described all that, so I won't waste a lot of time on it. I went through all of that. So let's talk about the fifth paradigm, because it is something totally different. And it basically acknowledges that all of these systems, this system of water supply from wherever you got it, and there's lots of different ways in which we get water. This system of rapidly bringing water to a piece of property, rapidly taking away any rain that falls on it, and rapidly removing and treating the wastewater, now we would like to call it used water, that because we don't like the idea of thinking there's anything in it to waste. There's no waste there. Taking used water away, that this system is really, in many cases, not what we want to do. We want to treat water in a much more comprehensive, one-water, holistic approach. In fact, in places that are water short, which you're not, we really don't want to bring it from 350 miles away, use it once, and throw it away. We really want to close the loop. We want to keep all the water we can keep. If you're Singapore, you don't want one drop of water to fall on that country that isn't used as water supply and reused and used again. You don't, because it's too valuable to use it once and throw it away. I'll make a case later that you're not that different from Singapore, because the cost of doing it, irrespective of how much you have available, is a lot. So you can talk about that later. And then the third point is, let's slow all this water down in the urban landscape. So we want to close the loop on the pipe systems, and we want to slow everything down so that we're not, so one, if you're Southern California, you can get it back into the groundwater system. And two, if you can slow it down, you can prevent that runoff, that dirty runoff, from making its way into creeks and streams. And now you've got a completely different view of what the system's trying to do. It's a totally different design concept, right? Completely different. And think of what a huge transformation that really is. So I have been working with other people trying to, how do you put all this together? How do you think about, how do you create a vision of this for a community where all these pieces fit together in a way that makes sense in a community? And so this is my framework. This is me personally. Make your own, okay? I mean, this is a time, one of the things that Thomas Kuhn talks about in the book that invented the concept of paradigm shift, is that these are times where the old models don't work, and so people are trying to invent new models. There's a lot of professional, what he describes as a lot of professional uncertainty, and it's a time when professionals are confronted with needing to come up with different answers and different ways of explaining how these pieces fit together. For me, there's 4 parts to it, and for me, the successful cities of the future really bring together these 4 elements: engaged community stakeholders, integrated traditional technology, so that the pipe systems are legacy systems. They're a tremendous asset. We've got to make the most of what we've got there. They're hard and expensive to expand, and so the less often we need to expand them, the more efficient the whole program is. We bring functional green technology together with it, and I'll just talk briefly about how challenging that is. And then finally, the magic, I think, is ultimately going to be in big data analytics and being able to see how these very different tools work together in one holistic and combined way. So, you recognize that? The last time I made this presentation, I was in Korea. I used to have a Toyota, but I went for a Hyundai. It played better in Korea. But it's a Sonata hybrid, and why am I showing you a Sonata hybrid? Because I think it's a great example of a whole new idea that is really made up of parts and pieces that we are all pretty familiar with. So there are my 4 elements there. Us, by the way, is important. I think that the thing that anybody who's designing a car like this does is they spend a lot of time on what does the customer want. So that I won't spend a lot of time on it, but just assume that almost everything in that picture is designed to satisfy the expectations of a very discerning customer. But it has the other parts too. It has a traditional internal combustion engine that has a gas tank. And I'll tell you that a gas tank is taking advantage of one of the most centralized distribution systems you can have, where we've got refineries and we strategically position gas stations that have storage, and they're close enough together that with the gas tank in the car, we've got one centralized system that allows us to use gasoline with an internal combustion engine, and it's very much like our traditional approach to infrastructure. But this has also got 2 electric generators and lithium batteries, and the electric generators are doing something totally different. They're not relying on anything centralized. In fact, they're opportunistically taking advantage of the natural environment around them. So if we're going down a hill, we're going to take advantage of that. If you put on the brakes, we're going to generate a little power from that. They're opportunistically using the natural environment. Now, the magic of it, actually, is in this electronically controlled clutch. That's what you couldn't do this. That's a great idea to have the central system of internal combustion and the electric motors that take advantage of whatever's around them. But if you don't have this clutch that seamlessly brings together the power so that you don't know which source of power you're actually relying upon at a given moment, except for the silences, that is what makes it work. So for me, this is a whole different design problem than the one that Henry Ford tackled and solved. It's opportunistically exploiting the external environment, which is what I think we're trying to do with rain gardens and green roofs and solar panels and wind farms and all of these tools which opportunistically take advantage of what's available to us in natural systems. And we've got a traditional centralized system that relies on a combustion engine. And they've invented an electronically controlled clutch to seamlessly integrate the two systems. We need to do the same thing. That's how you explain where the porous pavement fits together with the treatment plant expansion. Can you see these two things as part of one holistic system? Can you have that vision? So, given the fact that I've got about 5 minutes left, and way more slides than that, you're going to see these moving very, very rapidly. But I hope I've set up the notion here that what we need to do is reimagine the design problem that we face as a community, as planners, as engineers, to create the hybrid smart city of the future. And I'm going to challenge you as a community to do this for yourself. Come up with your own integrated vision of what you're trying to do here. So, on a fast-paced move through some slides that probably you don't really need to see all of, let's see what we've got. Exploiting the parts, engage stakeholders. What I'm only going to make one point about this, 2 points actually. The first point is, don't confuse all the options we've got on the right-hand side, the solutions path. Those are the tools. We got a lot of tools now. We got way more tools than we have ever had before, and we want to put them together in brand new ways. So do not start with the tools. My advice to you is to start with the vision. What the heck are you trying to accomplish? What is the mission? What are the objectives? And then look at all the ways in which you can put these tools together to do this in the way that is right for this community. And CH2M can help you do this. It's okay. I'm always Glenn Duggar and I are always together doing this. So I'm promoting CH2ML at this event. Now we need to get that out of any videotaped, so we'll have to edit that. I am promoting CDM Smith as a firm that can do that for you. The one other thing I would say is that what we have to do tomorrow that we're not doing today is we've got to figure out how robust these solutions are in the context of climate change. Because and it's one of the things why more decentralized approaches have and it's a long discussion, I won't have it, but they're more resilient in many respects than one big centralized system. I think we saw, sadly, in the Katrina case, how one central system, if design criteria are exceeded, can in fact cause a much bigger catastrophe than a more decentralized system might have resulted in. So that's another area. So we at CDM Smith are taking a lot of effort to figure out how to integrate the design of how do you put this together? How do you do this? This is a fascinating book. I highly recommend it. And it talks about the fundamental difference between the mechanical world of nature and the mechanical world of people. I'll just go to the bottom, which I think is the most interesting. We fabricate large devices directly, and think of a wastewater treatment plant as a good example of that. Nature's large things are cunning proliferations of tiny components. So when we start putting in green roofs and porous pavement and redesigning streets, we are in fact creating cunning proliferations of small things that if properly extended across a large geography, actually accomplish large things, but that's made up of many, 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 many tiny components. So what we've done, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, we are building simulation tools that help us decide, and here they're the water options, the central systems on the left, but do we want to do rooftop rain capture, indoor reuse, all kinds of things we're able to do. How do you put those together? And then how do you put them together with these energy options that you've got? Because should we use the roof for photovoltaics or green grass? I mean, how do you make that decision? In our case, we're looking at design objectives, and we are simulating combinations of traditional infrastructure and different combinations of small-scale decentralized infrastructure, and working with designers to help iterate through how do they perform under today's conditions, historical conditions, potential future conditions. Ultimately, what we're doing in these simulations is collecting tons of data. We're simulating performance on an hourly basis over one-year periods, thousands of variables. So we're looking at tremendous amounts of data as to how the water, energy, transportation, solid waste, ecosystem, and building systems work together. You need big data analytics to figure out what's going on in the system, to discover how these systems actually work, and we could talk about the ways in which they do. But we can use this same technology in the real world to run our utilities, because we're in a position today to have sensors and monitoring on almost everything that goes on in the urban environment. So if we're relying on trees, like we're relying on them in LA to do some of the work on stormwater management for us, let's know that those trees are there and healthy. And there's no reason why we can't look at the performance of trees in performative landscape the same way we look at the performance of a pipe, because it can be done. And this is the technology that can do it. And if we don't do it in our industry, IBM will do it for us. If I can do a power grid, I can do a water supply. I mean, come on. Just data. And they're doing it. That's Rio de Janeiro, where they collect data from everywhere and make on-the-spot decisions as to what's going to happen. They look at microclimates, they look at where rain's falling, they look at where they're going to have potential landslides, and they are pre-positioning for those events using this data center in Rio de Janeiro. I think this is the magic that can pull together the technologies we're looking at. If you're going to be working towards making this a center, figure out how to bring that data analytics into the process. And then one more overlap. Figure out how to bring your customers into this. Figure out how to bring your citizens and community into this. And that's a bunch of screenshots of an app that is on, that's on an iPhone in Australia to create a little social networking competition on who can use electricity most efficiently. Why aren't we doing this? People say, well, if we're going to put in all this small green infrastructure, how are we going to maintain it? Well, why don't we have an app that we give that is free to anybody who's interested in helping us? You'll find a lot of people are. probably everyone in this room would be. If you see something that we've put in, a small green improvement that's damaged or seems to not be performing, just take a picture of it. And we'll have an app that will send it to the utility responsible, and we'll get someone out to fix it. In fact, we can start in water to do the kind of real-time pricing that is already done in power, but we've got to come a long way in the metering of water use so that we can get people to, in fact, change their behavior, to have incentives to use water at times when we're not experiencing peak demands, which is what most of our infrastructure is designed for. So there's huge potential in this. So you bring it all together. I'm going to close with a couple of thoughts. I work with another EDB, Singapore EDB, and they've been effective because they're not only asking industries to locate there, they're making themselves a living lab for the cutting-edge technology that firms like ours are trying to get into the marketplace. And they see it as part of a bigger urban network, which I would strongly encourage you to think about, is that when we get into green infrastructure, we're talking about changing the building codes. If we want streets to not convey drainage as quickly as possible into receiving waters, we need to redesign streets. That's not something a water utility normally does. And so we really have to reach out to the other participants in what creates cities, and make everything, as Lee Kuan Yew says in Singapore, everything bends to the will of water. I can tell you a story as to why he felt that way. There's their vision, and you can see that CDM is on that picture on the left-hand side for having designed Marina Barrage, which takes what used to be an open harbor and has turned it into an urban freshwater reservoir. And CH2M Hill on the other side for the deep tunnel program that captures every bit of wastewater in Singapore so that it can be reused. They have a coherent vision, and they attract companies because of their image and mission for what they're trying to do as a community. So I would just say, to end this, win this pursuit for firms to move here and make this their home. Accelerate the growth of your clean water economy by becoming the community that proves in implementation the value of water-centric urban living. And with that, I'll stop.